Good evening all, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Policy and Performance Scrutiny Panel. I'm Councillor Steve Beer and we'll be chairing the meeting this evening in the absence of Richard Gomer, Councillor. This meeting will be video recorded and will be uploaded to the Council's website. Can we have apologies?
Yeah, we've got apologies from Councillors Gomer, Asman, Reynolds and Pretty.
Perfect. Do members have any declarations of interest they wish to make? If so, please indicate now, and when called, please state the nature and reason for the interest. You can, of course, declare any interests as and when they occur during the meeting. So we now move to the minutes of the meeting of the 10th of July 2024. Can I sign these minutes of the meeting of the 10th of July 2024 as a true record? Thank you very much. Seconder? Thank you very much. Agree? Guessing there's no public participation. I always love the idea they'll just all trot to at that point.
People hanging around outside, don't get them in.
Well, we can always ask them what they think about, kind of the animal points. So that's 51 people who conclude the survey. So policy and performance are asked to consider for the housing task and finish group. Policy and performance asked to consider the inclusion of housing sales policies as part of the remit of the housing policies task and finish group. Do I have a proposer? Thank you very much, guys. All those in favour? I had one. Oh, sorry, they both did it very, very quickly. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Any against? Any abstentions? Perfect. So we move on to the animal licensing and welfare policy. So Kirsten, can you introduce this?
We discuss the adoption of the animal welfare and licensing policy and public space protection order for dog growling. So the policy will ensure that the council carries out its animal licensing and welfare responsibilities in a fair, ethical and consistent manner. And it also helps members of the public to understand what the law requires and how the council will approach it. The adoption of the PSPO will enable the council to take action against members of the public whose dogs fail and they don't pick it up, and that will be done by way of fixed penalty notice of £100, which if it isn't paid then goes to prosecution and can be fined up to £1,000. So the request for permission to consult on the PSPO policy was agreed in Cabinet on the 22nd of February. We went out to consultation for 6 weeks. We sent out 121 emails to the statutory consultees and various businesses and interested parties within the borough. And we also advertised the consultation in the weekly borough news, our weekly newsletter, and it was publicly searchable through the citizens' space to reach the widest demographic possible. So the council received 51 responses. Of the 72% largely supported the adoption of the PSPO and animal welfare policy. And today's report seeks approval for the implementation of both the animal welfare and licensing policy, with any recommendations that feel is necessary to give.
Perfect. Do we have any recommendations to make? I was going to. Are there any questions about it at all? Councillor Broomfield.
It's just one. What happens in terms of out of hours? Stray dogs, there isn't anything.
Well, we have a contract with local kennels whereby they accept dogs up to 9 o'clock at night. But after that, there isn't anything after that. It becomes a police matter if a stray dog is out about and causing a danger that they pick up. And they also have the same contract with 3 Oaks where they can deposit the dog.
Just a comment. You obviously use 3 Oaks. If this is a policy, would it be better to put a local kennels, because it's obviously possible at some point 3 Oaks might not have the contract, and also from my own personal experience, probably the name of the kennels can have a difficult time, then in a difficult position because they turn up and they know their rights about who's allowed to keep their dog and who isn't. It can get quite nasty. So I'm just wondering whether it would be better to put a local kennels rather than specifically 3 Oaks.
implemented it, but they do run a collection service as well. So we do give the details out for people who want to go and collect the dogs. But yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I think on a daily basis, yes, but as a policy. So if in a year's time, 3 Oaks decide they don't want to do it anymore and you want to go somewhere else, you then haven't got to go everything and tip X out 3 Oaks and put in, I don't know, probably more kennels or something. Just that's all.
Councillor Broadhurst.
Thank you. I mean, I certainly welcome the policy. It does look, it's good. But yeah, I have said that in these sort of situations, I prefer an officer title for future reference rather than a particular person, so that in future someone knows who to go to. They know the position. It doesn't matter then who's filling it, it's still record. I actually look forward to us looking at the control of the number of dogs that people can. I have seen in Janus Ward a dog walker with 7 dogs on Friar Wreck, and those dogs became a pack and attacked another one. You know, someone just lady innocently walking a little terrier, and suddenly 7 sort of dogs of various sizes set on it, and because if you get that number of dogs, so I think that will be very welcome for us to do that. Because it is needed, and there is always animal welfare. I see too many people who have dogs, and they don't. The neighbour's just moved out, he left his dog all day, it barked all day. Well, it was barking because it was stressed, because it didn't believe its owner was going to come back. So, anything that is going to help this and give us the policies to deal with it is to be welcomed. So I'm certainly very happy.
But I just, oh sorry, do you want me to raise my hand on the chat or just speak up?
Thank you. Perfect time, George. Go for it.
Okay, so just really to echo what Alan said, I think I've seen the person that you mentioned with 7 dogs, Alan. There are issues with dog behaviour in general around Chalmers Ward. So I think anything that helps strengthen that is fantastic. Very broadly supportive of that measure. Yeah.
Perfect.
I was also going to kind of echo what Alan was going to say, that I'm pretty sure a few London boroughs, a few authorities have already put that rule in place.
Yeah,
because it is becoming a wider problem. I know a lot of US towns do it as well. So yeah, just to kind of echo Alan again, it's probably a good thing to look into and see if it is a serious problem and move from there. But yeah, overall, it seems like a really strong policy and some good work.
Yes.
I agree. I think it's really thorough and a great job. I have a question about this dog barking policy that I see that the recommendations, and I like that the policy is now that you will investigate and consider the cause of dog barking. That is important. But it seems to cross over with the RSPCA responsibility of kind of going in and checking on the dog, I guess. I mean, I don't know what that would involve, but are there enough resources within your department to cover that and training?
Yeah, we do get a particular consistent dog barking noise complaint. We would go out and see if there are any reasons why that dog might be barking, and then perhaps offer some advice and education as to how they might be able to solve that problem, whether it be with getting dog walkers or enrichment or all the kind of things. The dog to try and stop it being distressed with things.
Is it common that you would be met with resistance in that situation?
If we get resistance, we don't have any powers of entry. So we would then refer it to the RSPCA if we felt that there was a real problem and refer it on to the RSPCA. But no, actually, most people invite us in and welcome.
Any other questions or points?
Yeah, actually, there is one. I've only looked at it just now. I only noticed it specifically, but the section on euthanasia, etc. The only concern that I have with that is that it's a little bit fluffy. And I also wonder whether, hang on, let me find it. Here we go. It says here, euthanasia is an emotive topic. It's only employed by the council in specific circumstances and as a last resort. Without this option, stray dogs with a poor temperament would be kennelled indefinitely, as it would not be possible safely to rehome them. Indefinite kennelling would result in unnecessary suffering to the dogs, etc., etc. But it doesn't say specifically under what circumstances the dog would be euthanized. I don't know, and I also wonder if does that not cross over with RSPCA responsibilities as well? Is the other thing?
With regards to stray dogs.
Yeah.
So the RSPCA don't have any responsibility for stray dogs. They're purely the responsibility of the council. So at the moment, with a stray dog, you keep it for 7 days to wait for the owner to come and collect it. And if it doesn't, we look at rehoming dogs that we consider to be safe to rehome, but we would take the advice of a behaviourist and vet, and that's when we euthanize if they're not safe to rehome.
Right, okay, that makes sense. That's a little bit more specific than I've realised. Okay, great, thank you.
I just echo what everyone has said. I found the report really enjoyable to read, and I think everything was really well covered. Everyone happy that we note the report? Perfect, thank you very much. We move on to the corporate finance and performance. Q1. Oh, running away, jeez. We'll see you at the pub in about 10 minutes. So, Lewis, are you happy to introduce the report?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. I'm just going to share some slides on screen. They'll come up. There we go. So, yes, in terms of introductions, normally there'd be more than just me here, but it's just myself tonight. So there's no one from finance. So if there's any technical finance queries, I can take them away. Obviously, come back to committee as required. But I guess first things first, quarterly performance reports. This covers April 24 through to June 24. So whilst that's a little bit historic, just in terms of timing, mainly that's because of the committee break over the summer, we have tried to bring the report up to now and tried to make it as present as possible. I think for the purpose of this presentation, it's really just a summary of the key items. And then I'd really just encourage everyone to read the sort of top report, the focus on the highlight report. And then if there are particular questions, it should hopefully be covered in the appendices. We've tried to shift it around a little bit this time, just to make it quite sort of heavy in terms of the overview report, and then obviously take any questions at the end. So I think first things first, given the fact that we have changed the structure of the report a little bit, I'll give a little bit of an overall summary as to what we've done. So the actual report itself, content is at that corporate level. And what we've tried to do is move more of the service-specific items into the relevant appendices. So you'll see we have things like the corporate performance progress in Appendix C, and also things like the scorecard summary in Appendix A, which is still our CPI charts and our listing, which you'll probably be familiar with now. So we've been using that for quite a few quarters. And then finally, we've got the corporate plan, 3-year action plan progress, which is in Appendix H. So the information that used to be in the full body of the report is now found in those appendices. And we're hoping that gives the report itself more of a corporate feel and a bit more high level, rather than sort of getting into too much detail. And hopefully the appendices will pick up that detail as required. That will be, I think, an approach we'll try to take as we go forward, providing it's successful and works for everybody. In terms of the key items, I think the overall position is showing performance improvement year on year. So we can see that there is improvement based on our corporate performance in terms of service performance. I'll come on to that in terms of our CPIs. From the point of view of services are forecasting a net 207k additional pressure on the general fund. That's having to use a further 656,000 of earmarked reserves to mitigate issues. Despite that, the forecast general fund surplus remains, and there's a continued use of the interest reserves remains a continual mitigation against the challenging interest rate position. So within those appendices I'd referenced, there is more detail on the interest position and also the mitigations that are in place. I think a continual focus for the council is our service improvement and efficiencies programme. There is a separate appendix on that, Appendix B off the top of my head, And there's information in there around the progress to date. The current year, we can see there is a surplus against our savings target for this current financial year, which is a positive position to be in. And we do know from previous years that we will see some slippage. So it's important we have that continual surplus as we go forward. The future gap into future years remains a top priority. Still continuing to develop ideas and those conversations with services, and also at the corporate leadership board level continue. The final, I suppose, key element is the housing programme and One Horn Heath. I think the need to integrate the Eastbrook housing function into the organisation and become more business as usual is becoming more critical. We're seeing that through conversations with services. They're becoming more prepared for that, and there's becoming more awareness across the organisation. I think there's an understanding that it will pose a significant resource challenge, and everyone's well aware of that. And so it will become a key priority, or continue to be a key priority as we go. I think the initial focus has been around structuring that programme and understanding what the key deliverables are. We're well underway on that work at the moment. And there is a member briefing, which I know is planned for early October, which will give a bit more information on Eastbrook and the housing programme more generally. But that is touched upon in the report overall. And then in terms of resourcing challenges, I think the continual challenge with managing our existing business as usual activities along with our other corporate priorities continues to be that challenge that we find ourselves in. There are still pockets of issues in terms of sickness and recruitment, and sort of detailed in the report. But generally speaking, we've seen some good progression in terms of sickness reducing, but also some success in recruitment in some key areas, which is also positive to see. But there'll be universal challenges that will always remain that we'll keep monitoring. And the demand point is more around prioritisation, which I'll come on to in a second. The vacancy factor note, which you can note on the screen, is more around each year we have a forecast that we suggest we'll have as a vacancy factor that we can scoop up in terms of the financial position. And so far we've made about 60% or so progress for this financial year back at Q1, so at the end of June. So we're on our way to achieving that vacancy factor for the year, which is good. In terms of prioritisation, I think the key message that at least I took from the report was that we've got the improved business as usual performance. So you can see our CPIs are performing and they've improved year on year, as well as the resourcing challenges together, that kind of mix of things that are being highlighted. Perhaps as highlighted, there's a prioritisation issue around strategic planning and just making sure that we've got resources in the right place, because they feel a little bit contradictory to have those two things happening at the same time. So that's why we've pushed forward with the prioritisation exercise. That's happened and started in Q2, and we'll touch more on that when we come to the Q2 report, which will be in around about November time. We'll come back to committee on that, but that work is progressing. And then the final thing, just on the corporate plan, I think it's worth noting there were no specific actions in the corporate plan, 3-year action plan for Q1, but there are actions that were listed as throughout, and they are continuing to progress. And Mike Culver has updated the appendix, which you'll see within the report for specific detail on that. The prioritisation work that I've referenced already will lead into a review of the corporate plan, 3-year action plan, which is planned for later in this calendar year, heading into early next year, looking at trying to tweak some of those actions based on what's coming out of the prioritisation work as we go forward. And then finally, the performance. I've mentioned a couple of times that performance indicators have shown improvement. And really what we're referring to there is year on year. So we've just compared Q1 23-24 to Q1 24-25. I think it's fair to say, whilst these CPIs aren't everything, we know they don't show us absolutely everything for the council. It does give a good feel of how the council's performing, particularly when a lot of them are statutory performance indicators. And so I think it's good to see that we've progressed in the green category. You can see there has been a reduction in those in amber, but therefore obviously the red position has increased slightly. But from a green perspective, we have increased from 68% up to 75% year on year. In terms of the specifics, I appreciate it's quite small on the screen, but in effect that really is touching upon council tax queries. We did see the impact of annual billing, which was expected as always through that period. I'm pleased to say that the position is improving into Q2. The number of queries are starting to reduce, which is good. And also the collection rate on council tax remains in a good position. Just on the number of households in emergency accommodation, I know Councillor Gomer actually asked for an update at the last committee meeting. There is a sustained red report that's been produced and that's been shared via Richard, so hopefully that will potentially make its way out. I think we took it out of this report, so it's quite a lot of service-specific information in there. But broadly, there is an update in the report on the position overall. but that does go into a little bit more detail, and I'm sure the team happy to take queries if any do come about from that. I think the key message on that at the moment is there was a reduction. You'll see that within the report between the numbers from May to June, and that reduction is sustained into Q2. So we can see that position, while still red, is, I suppose, stabilising at this point, is probably fair to say. And we are going to look at the thresholds for that particular measure, because the position hasn't been reviewed since 2021. The national picture has changed drastically for housing since then. So that's something that we will look at in due course. And then the final point is about customer reported missed bins that continue to be performing well in terms of a green performance, and that's based on the proportion of bins collected. And the only thing that we want to look at into Q2 is the cost of doing so, and the costs of sustaining that service. That's something I think is worth giving a little bit of context to, because it's quite easy to look at just the figures and not think about potential implications. I think they're the key points that were sort of hopefully noteworthy to pick out. So I'm happy to take any questions if there's anything specific, and then go from there really.
Yeah. It's an observation rather than a question. Councillor Broadhurst and I last week attended an online training session about scrutiny. You remember it well. And one of the key points that was raised by the lady facilitating session is that scrutiny panels should not be scrutinising documents of 200 plus pages. And we get this every year. I've been on this panel now for 3 years, and every so often this comes up, and there is page after page after page of information, some of which is very useful, some of which, quite frankly, is almost irrelevant, and some of which is, in all honesty, a little bit confusing. So I'm not blaming you. I suppose it's really for the panels to report back. I feel that we would be better served, and the work of this committee, is it a committee? Panel. This panel, thank you, just checking. This panel would be better served if we had smaller, more concise reports that we can actually read in some detail, because we're all busy people in one way or another. And sitting down and wading through 240 pages of a document, actually, I think, I don't know about you, but I cannot read every line. I pick out little bits that look interesting, but that probably means I'm missing other bits which might be more interesting. So I would like some thoughts to be given to providing information in a more concise format. It could be available somewhere for us to go if we're having a quiet afternoon. Nothing interesting will tell you about it. But I just think we're being bamboozled by too much information. I don't know if you agree, Alan.
Well, funny enough, I gave up yesterday afternoon to go through this. So, yeah. You know I agree, because I was the one that brought it up. But there are things which, if you look at, it's when we're going through the individual things, gas usage, electric usage, bound to interest me, because in that industry all my life. When we're given things that show gas is increased, well, that could be because the weather was colder than last year. We need to know a little bit more, be able to dig into the reasons behind. It might be that something has changed. We might be actually be more efficient with our energy use. But if the weather's changed, you need all the information, not just headline figures, or something that we can dig into. But what we need are the headlines, and just headlines that then we can dig into, because we all have different interests. So, me, energy use or something like that, I'm going to go and look at it.
Well, if there's something about which we need more detail, we can ask.
Yeah, we can get it and find out why that is before the meeting. But when we've got so much, I must admit, by the time I got through the end of the pages, I'd forgotten what I started with. They are a bit I know I've got old. My memory's not so good, but
I wouldn't say it's that. Chair.
No, absolutely.
I suppose from the report point of view, the aim is that we try and have that summary report, as I've mentioned, to be more those headlines that we think the panel needs to sort of be aware of or would like to be aware of. The appendices, as we go forward, I think there has been a tendency to share because we've got the information and it's available. And it's almost like here, have everything, have 250 pages of data, rather than these are things we think you should perhaps look at. Or, as Councillor Broomfield just said, if there's something you'd like to know more of, we can then share it at a later date. So I think we can revise and adjust. I'd say the charts take up quite a lot of the data and quite a lot of the document. And when I was reading through it myself, and that information, whilst it looks like it takes a lot of time to produce, is quite automated, it's quite straightforward, but I'm not trying to justify its inclusion. I'm just trying to say that it's not as extensive as it looks. But listen to the feedback. I think we'll see if we can. So the report that goes to Cabinet is slightly streamlined. There's 2 Appendix A's, and so it may well be that we just remove the P&P version, perhaps for Q2, see how that feels as a report overall, and then perhaps we can adjust it from there. I'm happy to do that for Q2 and see if it feels more manageable because of the content's reduced, and then take it from there. Just on the point about gas usage, there was a particular issue with the combined heat and power, and got switched on 5 days earlier, and so that meant consumption went through the roof. Just to pick up that point, but yeah, happy to adjust it slightly.
I think also, can we have just a point where we review how we found the documents versus these documents in the next pack? Just because this isn't the first time I've heard Councillor Broomfield bring this up, and I sometimes look at, I think it was 275 this time, and it is dense, and it is, you know, a little bit younger than you, and I found it very hard to get through a lot of it. So so if we could just maybe have a point just to review it and just ask people how they found it, that'd be really appreciated.
Could I just add a little bit to that there? I think for me, I agree entirely. It would be really helpful to have sort of more of a compact kind of, I think really for me, bullet points of things that officers think we should look out for, but also just any concerns they have, things they'd like us to look at in the report. I liked having the detail and being able to flip to what I want, but to read through all of this and make an accurate sort of, and feel like I've really scrutinised it, that isn't going to be possible to look through all of that. So I think what is key for me is knowing the things that officers think I should be looking for within the rest of that data. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm kind of in 2 minds about it. I'm fully with George that bullet pointing might help streamline it a bit, but the other side is ultimately we are the scrutiny panel and we kind of need to be the people who are looking at the really dense stuff. So I think it'd be kind of useful to see what a revised report would look like next time we review it, but I'm kind of in the mind that it's good that we have this data and it is quite clearly set out so we can pick and choose the areas that we're interested in and areas of concern and areas of positivity. But yeah, maybe some better headlining of what to look out for first would help us out a bit.
Councillor Caws, you did have a hand up.
Yeah.
Funny enough, both of us are looking at the same page about clearing of flight tipping. But yeah, I was looking at that thinking, yes, it tells me the percentage which are completed on time. But what would probably be of more interest to us as a panel would be percentage fly tipping in general. Is it increasing? Because with the county reducing hours at the household waste recycling points and things like that and closing some, I mean, on viewers, it will increase fly tipping. But it'd be nice to just a simple percentage of the fly tipping increase or decrease so that it gives us a better idea. Knowing how much we cleared on time, we're really about twice as much.
Yeah.
You know, to be able to look at it in context.
Yes.
Rather than isolated.
Yes. sorry to interrupt, Alan. I think context is the word for me because I think it's very difficult to look through. I would hate to see any data disappear, but context on things like fly tipping to understand what the trends are, where we are, how it's improving. I mean, for example, I love the store cards, the environmental store cards. That kind of thing is really helpful because it helps you see those trends. So yeah, definitely.
Just on that
No,
point
no,
around,
go for it.
about fly tipping, the inclusion of the number cleared should also have a sort of the next to it, the number reported. But notwithstanding that is only the fly tips that go to the neighbourhood services team to clear, which I assume would be the majority of what we have received. There is a piece of work ongoing around understanding enforcement. I know that's a key priority around some of the work that we're actually doing. And so we'll likely see another CPI included in the not too distant future around that work. It's more not just about clearance, but proactive work and enforcement. And we've done a lot on that in recent months. And so that should be included in the not too distant future. But if there are things like that that we want to see more on, we're more than happy to chart specifics. And I can take them away and bring them back if it's not in there. I think the point Councillor Baker made around the charts and the graphs and seeing those trajectories, that's the sort of stuff that we love and we crawl all over. And it's probably more for us to share some of that in a bit of a better format rather than asking you to perhaps do the same.
I mean, but look, this is an evolving thing. We all know that, and I think obviously we're looking at them on a semi-regular basis, and kind of feeding back. If there's any other points you potentially where you want to ask us, as you're creating the charts, like actually, how does this? What do you think? Is that something you'd be willing to do? To send them out ahead of time individually and just go, can I get a bit of feedback on? Because I know for me, I'm data heavy at work, but a lot of people are not, and I'm very, very. I will send out huge spreadsheets of numbers, and some people look at that and go, "Oh, I'm not comfortable with that." So, yeah, I recognise that different things will, may be interesting for some people and not of others. So, but yeah, I personally find having all the detail very. I think it's good to be able to share that amount of detail with with everyone, but it's just headlines might be also quite useful.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Yeah.
I was just thinking, just randomly looking at number 5, organisation. Now the headline is organisation quarterly scorecard, and if we look at it, for example, 5.3 FOI, I believe EIR request responded to within SLA is just a straightforward green G all the way through. Nothing's changed. Now, question I would ask is, with 5.4 corporate sickness is red all the way through. Now, if something's working properly, do we need a particularly detailed report on that? But if something's working badly, then that's where we probably need perhaps more information. So that would put chart 5.3, I actually think probably isn't really necessary because we know it's working well. Where I think we need information is 5.4 corporate sickness is obviously not working well. So you could spin it down in these charts where you really need to really do a bar chart if either something has changed remarkably or something is really not doing as it should do. So if you've got a good all the way through or something that's sort of acceptable, actually you might not need to know too much about it. But if it was bad last month and it's really good this month, that would be useful to know, and vice versa. And if we're constantly failing, as with sickness, there's an issue there. So you could take out some of the bar charts quite simply by just not going into great detail about the things that actually just doing well.
Yeah, from a point of view of what we monitor, I suppose at corporate level, we tend to focus on what we call sustained reds. So if they are continually red for more than 2 or 3 months, that's where we'll do the sort of deeper dive. So from a sense of how we could potentially group the information together, we can look to do them at that red position sort of on top and maybe have the others either not included or there to one side. I think that the tricky bit we have sometimes is presenting that balanced position of not focusing too much on the reds and wanting to try and pull out some of those positives as well. So it's just getting the balance right.
Yes,
from that point of view.
I do appreciate that, but it's I was just thinking of things that we probably don't need to go into great detail on. I mean, occasionally, because we can see FMI, sorry, EIR, fine, we can comment on that. It's the information that we need. As I said, I think we just get slightly swamped because we can't have too many budgets.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
Is there any more questions or points to raise?
I will ask my standing question, which is how are things going with Eastleigh Business Centre?
Waiting for the
yes,
feasibility study,
yeah,
aren't
we are.
So I think that's due either later this month or sometime in October.
October's going to be a big month, isn't it?
It is. It is.
Yes. Fantastic. Are we comfortable noting the report?
Yeah.
Perfect.
I might have some questions, but I might.
Absolutely fine. Yeah, no problem.
So moving on to the cabinet forward plan. Does anyone have any questions or comments on this? I think, is this where we were talking about? No, that's all. Okay. Everyone comfortable? Do you have a proposer? Thank you. Seconder? Thank you very much. All in favour?
Yeah.
Thank you. Against, abstentions, I think everyone agreed to it. Policy and performance scrutiny work programme next. Does anyone have any questions about this? There's one.
So I've got to wade through to. Yes, here's a question. I see we're doing CCTV next month, so that's I think that's quite overdue. Will we be looking at some point progress on the new re-implementing Eastleigh consultation?
I'm not aware of it, but we can.
Is that the work that Hemingway Design are doing?
So yeah,
The one that Hemingway Design are doing
Yes.
in the town centre?
Yeah.
I don't know, I can check with Joe. I'm not aware of a report due to come back, but I would have thought at the end of that whole project, because it's a cross-borough project, it's UK SPF funding, so there'll be a funding report required at some point.
okay.
It's funded by, I think it was DLUC and now MHCLG.
And 50 grand from either. So it is using Eastleigh money and it is passing Eastleigh project. So
Yeah.
And also, obviously, I would still like to put Rock Couple.
Yes, no, that's what I was waiting for. You happy to have those? Perfect. Anything else? Proposer? Thank you very much. Seconder? Are you all in favour?
Yeah.
Amazing. So that concludes tonight's meeting. The next meeting will be held on the 17th of October at 6:45. Probably here again. Well, unless we do Andy's ideas of pubs and then coming here. But yes. Might be a bit ambitious. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.